Hello world, it's me, Dennis. My co-producer, Renee Yaworski, sent me this video from a TikTok star named Tiye Chambers. Here is that video.
You leveled up, increased your emotional intelligence, your mental health, your financial stability, your confidence, your spiritual fortitude. You have raised your maturity rates. It costs more to be around you now. And the only currencies accepted here are authenticity, loyalty, honesty, integrity, and reciprocation. The problem is, some people are so used to getting all of you at a discounted, damn near free rate, barely giving you anything in return, yet taking full advantage of the best that you are. When it comes to healthy interactions with you, give yourself permission to charge what you're worth. But if it's difficult for you to see your worth, then at the very least honor and respect your work. Everything you've fought through, everything you've healed from, every failure or disappointment you've had to climb up out of, everything you've done to get where you are, protect that, because that is your harvest and does not belong to those who feel entitled to reap where they have not sown, and in some cases even attempted to ruin your seed. But not to worry, you don't even need to put focus on that. If you only accept the aforementioned currencies, then people can't afford to be in your presence anyway. Boundary up. I hope this helps.
Well, as you can imagine, I immediately reached out to Tiye, and despite the demands on her schedule, she graciously agreed to appear on the show. Here is that conversation. Tiye,
Yes,
I am
Dennis.
so glad to see you today, and thank you
Well,
for being
thank
on Reasonably
you.
Spontaneous Conversation.
Thank you for the invitation. I am delighted. I'm
Well,
delighted.
I got a chance to see you on TikTok, and I was knocked out. There
Thank you.
was, because I've been in television, as you know, most of my life.
Mhm.
Started in television in '66,
Okay.
and there is an ability to communicate where you sit there to be able to connect with the audience. And I mean, I was like 2 seconds into the first TikTok that my producer Renee Yaworski sent, and I was like,
Thank you very much.
so how did you develop that ability to talk and to talk so much to make that personal person-to-person connection that you have? Because I know you were in theater, right, in school,
I
and
was.
that you have that. Talk a little bit about this journey of communicating to the audiences. Would you please?
Yes, absolutely. I kind of have to cheat a little bit and say it's partially the way I'm wired. I think I came to this planet this way. I actually didn't speak until after I was two, but people used to tell my mom when she talks, she's going to have stuff to say. Don't worry, she's going to have things to say. And I come from a very athletically inclined family. My mother and uncles and aunts, they're all like record holders from where we are in track and gymnastics. And I started to do that. And then one day I was on my uncle's track team and I said, you know what? I think I was probably around 7 or 8. And I said, I would rather be the announcer. Do you mind if I'm the announcer? And they let me announce the races. And so, yeah, they let me announce the races. I had learned to read by the time I was 3, and I was reciting like chapters at 4 of the Bible. They used to call me Little Preacher. So I just kind of that's who I am. And I just have always been the type to like to story tell and really engulf stories. I read a lot of stories. I'm very taken with the structure of telling a story. And so I feel like my life kind of has taken a path that's led me down honing what was naturally in me, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So
it
when I went,
makes beautiful sense.
yeah,
So and as you're dealing now, you graduated from high school in what year?
in 2000.
In 2000. Who
Mhm.
who did Tiye Chambers think she was in 2000? This
That is an
this this young
amazing
woman
question.
who is
Oh,
where are you? What part of the country?
yeah. So in the year 2000, I am in the area of Seattle, Washington. That's where I was largely raised in the
Got
Tacoma,
it.
Washington area.
Mhm.
Now, in that area, there's a lot of diversity, but not exactly what I would have hoped. And I felt at that point in time, the 17-year-old Ty was one that was really not very confident in herself or her abilities or her just her person. And I wanted to go someplace where I felt a little bit more home. So I decided to go to a historically Black college, one that my boyfriend at the time was going to, but I actually had gotten scholarships to several different HBCUs. So that's where I wanted to go. And I really was just kind of searching because it didn't, at that point in time, it didn't feel like I really had my foot in anything. I was a vocalist, a professional vocalist at a point in period in my life. So I actually got a scholarship for my voice. So I went to college for singing, and it didn't really feel, although singing is my happy place, it's not my professional place. I don't feel it's my purpose. So it didn't really last when I got to college, but then it took me down another path. And that's who I was. And it kind of
Yeah.
steered me to appreciate my skin, to appreciate my person, to appreciate my skills. And that's how I
So,
started.
so what was it like going from this less diverse place, going to an HBCU and
Mhm.
experiencing that for the first time? How did that work on your psyche? How did that work on your experience of who you are, Ty?
You know, what's really interesting, I went to college with a cohort of students from Washington State. So there were a group of us who went there together. And for many of them, it was a huge culture shock. And they ultimately ended up going home because we hadn't been surrounded by so many people that looked like us in professional arenas, our president, our provost, our teachers, our professors, men, women, students, people we're sharing dorms with. But for me, I will actually never forget the first professional seminar I went to. My professor said, while you're here, it was all freshmen, while you're here, you're going to be taking a vacation from racism. And it was like, I looked around and I was like, did anybody else hear that? Because it felt so pure to me. It felt like, oh, that's true. And I had already been there for like a week and a half, not a very long time, but I had been there for a week and a half. And for me, it wasn't a culture shock at all. It actually felt like breathing for the first time. And I know that sounds very dramatic. I know that's dramatic, but it really
No, no,
did.
no,
It
please, I
felt as
get
though
it.
yeah, it felt as though I had been living in smog, and then all of a sudden I was in fresh air, where I didn't have to like look around or watch my words or, as we call it, code switch. I didn't have to do any of that. And so it allowed me to rest in who I was and then just build on the skills, because ultimately I think what I didn't recognize then was I was living in survival mode and I didn't know that. So it gave me a break from that. And when you have a break from that, you recognize you're able to pour into yourself, you're able to do more because you're not worried about trying to navigate everything else.
And so your experience of really experience of seeing your true self and experiencing this as opposed to what you have been carrying, this
Yeah.
facade that you have been carrying, and now you're getting a chance to do it. So how do you integrate those things? How does that come together in your own?
Yeah.
Because now you're in fine arts, you're working there, are you performing, you're doing theater there?
I was doing theater. I was singing. I was the only, or there were two of us actually, me, myself, and another freshman. We were the only freshmen in the concert chorale, which traveled. So we were, because we were scholarshiped. So we were traveling around singing. I was also doing theater arts, but my primary was speech communication. I was actually learning to build on the skill that was natural. So I majored in speech communication and theater arts. But theater arts was kind of, I don't want to say an afterthought, because that's not, it's wholly part of me too, wholly. But my focus was really learning how to build on this skill that is speaking, because I knew that's the place that felt natural to me, that felt comfortable to me. And integrating it wasn't as hard as it seemed, because I had put myself in a position to do the things that came naturally to me. So I was naturally inclined. So it wasn't so much integrating it as much as it was resting in it and being okay with it. And that proved to be, honestly, what I think was the beginning of my boundary up journey. Because ultimately, what happens to us when we get in a place where we are natural, when we're in our lane, when we're flowing with, I mean, you know this, Dennis, because you've been doing this for so many years. You're akin to this. What I'm
Oh yes,
saying.
but I have to tell you, I do know this, but at the same time, boundary issues are an ongoing ongoing, lifelong
Absolutely.
journey that it's like when you set when you set a boundary with someone, it never happens once.
No.
Always has to go back and
Well,
revisit,
well,
rebuild,
Dennis.
right?
Well, kind of, because
Help me. No, that this is what that's what I'm here for.
I ultimately have taught a different approach to boundaries. So I
Oh,
believe
that's
that
what I want to know. Help me,
we're gonna okay,
please.
hold on. We're jumping there. I'm willing to jump there with you, but I do want to touch back on how I was saying it began the journey for me, because when you get into the flow and you're doing what naturally comes to you, like this is who you are, other people aren't always happy to see you performing so well, right? And not only so well, but so naturally. Because for others, what they are fighting to do, it seems as if it comes naturally and effortlessly to you. Now, nothing came effortlessly, so to speak. I absolutely studied and worked my butt off. I graduated summa cum laude. Like I was not playing when it came to my college degree, because I'm very I want to know how to do things better. That's always been me. I want to progress. However, I began to get very, very nasty treatment, extremely, such that I walked away from my scholarship because I was, let's call a spade, being bullied for seemingly walking into this group where people have been waiting for their chance, and then who is this kid, who's this girl, she just got here, she's a teenager, she's not even, we've been here for 4 years, 3 years, whatever, what is this? And so I did not understand that then. And what really could have been, I don't want to say it could have been the opportunity to start building that then. It was the foundation. It was the foundation, because it kind of started a trajectory of decades of feeling like I needed to hide myself, feeling like I need to let me not shine so much. I'm going to mute who I am a little bit, because every time it seemed to me that I was noticing a pattern every time either I'm completely myself or I'm achieving something that maybe other people want to achieve, I instantly get hate, jealousy, whatever. And I hated that feeling, because I am such a genuine, loving, open person that I never wanted to make anybody feel that way. So it always seemed like a burden to me to be me. Does that make sense?
It does, and but that also it's part of your power and your magnetism, because
Mm,
when you come in, I mean, you have some basic qualities that you come
sure.
in, and you come into this life, and then you expand on them, and then when those qualities are the qualities that people are searching for, that they want,
Yeah.
that they would want, you have them there, and now you have to deal with it.
Yeah. And the thing is, who teaches you how to do this? Like nobody, it's no fault of any of the generations that came before us. Nobody is really out there teaching emotional IQ, boundaries, how to deal with people who are dealing with issues like that, even how to deal with those issues within ourselves. Because yes, I had many times where I had to watch others, win time and time again. And it was like, how come when it's my turn, like I'm sitting on all of this stuff, all of this good stuff, and when is my turn? So you even have to learn how to deal healthily with those feelings within yourself. And so like this all culminated for me with, you know I hate to really say it like this, but this all culminated for me when I escaped a very toxic and abusive relationship and a marriage. And I learned, unfortunately, the hard way that you cannot be open and loving and accepting and unconditional with everybody. You just can't. But instead of shutting it all down and everybody loses, including myself and whoever else I may want to connect with in the future, be it platonically, professionally, romantically, instead of shutting completely down and saying like, I will not do any of this again, I had this fire within me that said, literally said, "You will not. They will not win." Let me tell you something, Ty. And I had literally had to have many conversations with myself on the floor, crying. Literally, Dennis, I'm homeless at this point. I am like, there's all these immense challenges that you have to work through while being a mom, while having life is flowing. Nothing stopped, So it was literally like, okay, we've got to learn how to do this. And I do not credit this to myself. There were a handful of women who I say actually helped save my life and give me the tools that I needed to start me on this trajectory to see that it was possible. And then it was like, we've got to figure this out, because you need to learn how to deal with these emotions, not just emotions. You've got to learn to deal with your fire, your power, and your shadow. And I was in this place where I was in the middle. I did not know how to deal with my power, nor did I know how to deal with my shadow. And that is the place where most people live. And first, I had to learn shadow. Hey, we've got to get out of this. We got to figure it out. And then ultimately, it thrust me into a place where I began to see, just because I had learned to deal with the shadow, I was more powerful, just in general. And then with that more powerful, you see the shadow from other people. So now you learn, okay, next level, we're dealing with the next thing. Now you need to learn how to balance how you feel about other people's feelings towards you. And all of that is encompassing in boundaries, all of it. And so ultimately we got to a place, myself, and my therapist, and where I could say, you know what? I've been logically thinking about this. I like to marry two things. I like to marry logic and intuition. Because when you do that, I feel like you're just unstoppable. You're unstoppable when you marry the two. So in marrying logic and intuition, I really give each a space. We're going to think logically about this. This is what our intuition is saying. And let's not fool ourselves. Sometimes our intuition tells us things we don't want to hear. And that is why we need the logic. Because in the moments that our intuition tells us something we don't want to hear, if we calm that and give space to the logical, we now get to look at the facts. And the facts say boom, boom, boom. And if your intuition and your facts are lining up and something isn't adding up, you got your answer. Now, whether or not you want to accept that is your work. But see, that's where I learned, can't really blame other people. When you have all the information you need, the steps to take are yours. They're yours. So that's where we are. And that's how I found it. And I started looking at these logical aspects of boundaries. And I realized, no, you know what? We've been doing boundaries. Now, I'm not saying we have been doing them wrong, because there's no wrong. This is all subjective. It's all what works for you. But for me, I noticed that we have a tendency, we as people have a tendency to create a new set of boundaries around different people. Like every time we come up against somebody that's pushing up against our boundaries, we now have to create a boundary circle around that person. And I like to call it a sparring circle. So the old way of boundaries are where we're sparring. We're sparring against this person, that person. But the thing about that spar, usually when you're dealing with a toxic person, most of the time we don't have to put up boundaries with people. Well, we should always have up boundaries. But what I'm saying is, when we feel like we need to exert some boundaries, most of the time it's somebody pushing up against boundaries in a way they know they shouldn't, and we know they shouldn't. So just based off of that, you're already probably dealing with somebody that's manipulative or toxic or whatever you want to call it. They may be problematic. We'll put it like that. They may be problematic. If you're already having to deal with a person like that, then chances are when you go to put up boundaries in the old way, you're dealing with, think about a sumo wrestling ring. Those sumo rings where they get in the ring, blah, 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 blah. See, the problem with the old way of boundaries is that you come in the ring 120 pounds wet, soaking wet. They come in the ring full of tactics, nastiness, playing tricks, and they don't fight dirty. So you go in there thinking, okay, we're going to have a clean spar. We're going to have a clean ring, clean fight. 1, 2, 3, let's go. And immediately you're knocked out of the circle. And it feels like, I'm never going to be able to do this. I am never going to be able to do this, because they don't fight fair. They keep pushing you down. They keep wearing you down. And you don't feel like you have the strength to push up against this person who has more than likely decades of toxic tactics in their tool belt, right? In their tool belt. But that's when I say, logically, there has to be a better way. The thing is, we are taking the fight to them when we approach boundaries in this sparring ring. But if we start to look at boundaries like a home, a foundational structure where every person gets the same boundaries. Every person. Then it becomes far easier to uphold boundaries. So we all know when you're building a modern home, right? Am I rambling on too much?
No, no,
Okay.
I please ramble, continue the ramble.
Okay. When we're building a home, like a modern day home, we all know that there are certain elements of the structure that need to go up. You need lumber, you need drywall, you need, concrete, you need all those things. The same are true with foundational boundaries. There are 5 areas in our life that everything touches. Every interaction, every action, everything is going to touch your time, your resources, your personal space, your body, like, your mind, your emotions, yeah. So we've got time, personal space, resources. I don't remember what I
Motion.
said already. Your physical body.
Mhm.
Well, let me keep going because I'm sure it'll pop up
Sure,
as I talk.
sure, sure.
But as we look at these different elements of our lives, you can then start to say, this is how I want to utilize my time. Okay. Anybody this is what I want to give. This is what I have to give. I have the capacity to give this. And we think about these different 5 elements like the structure of our home. So when you know what your door looks like and what your window looks like, when you know what I want my time to look like, I know what I want my personal resources to look like, I know what I have to give, what I don't. Anybody that approaches those resources and says, yeah, I want you to just, I know you have a connection to such and such. I want you to hook me up with them. Okay, wait, hold on. See, that's touching what I have to give. That's ultimately when when you're paying attention to these elements, these different elements, you can say, I see you kind of trying to pry into my window here. I didn't, this is not something I kind of want to give. You didn't ask, you just kind of assumed you would have it. So the bottom line is, I like to teach people that when you are paying attention to these foundational aspects, then everybody gets the same thing. I don't, I'm sorry, I don't give out my time this way, or I don't such and such. It's easier when it's not personal. When you're in a sparring circle, it's personal. I have to make sure that that person, like, you can give me an example of something somebody might do that you feel is crossing boundaries.
That they would be asking for my time in a way that infringes upon my my time when I'm off.
Time when you're off. Okay, so that is touching your time, the time element of your boundaries. And what you can do in that situation is you state what is happening, maybe like, or like, I know we normally work together, but this is my time off. So I'd appreciate it if we can touch base back when I'm working. I utilize this time for other things. So it's like a sandwich. You give them what's happening, what what they desire, and what you desire, and you tie it all together. But it doesn't have to be. Boundaries feel icky because, number one, we're more than likely going up against an icky person, and that's why they feel icky, because they make us feel icky. It's a certain thing called fog: fear, obligation, guilt. Okay. And the second reason why they feel tough is because we don't recognize we have the ability to say no. The person has made us feel so bad about it that we're not really sure, should I say no to this person. But when you have one set of boundaries, it's not personal. It just is how you operate. It's my house. You don't feel bad for lowering your garage at night, or nor do you feel bad for locking your doors. It just is. And you recognize you're locking the doors and you're closing the garage and doing whatever you have to do, closing the screen door, because you're desiring to keep the best parts of you and your family and what you have safe. So when we start to look at it from that aspect, and we just say, look, this is just how I like to operate, that's when you can start to say, okay, so I know kind of how I can interact. This is, but you first have to get clear on what you desire, what's clear for you, what's best for you. And yes, people will push back when you start to say, hey, because you got to clear people out of your house. Okay, they've been in there partying, and you got to clear them out. And that's not always easy work because of fog. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
Fear, obligation, guilt. But once you do, that's when you can say, look, okay, I know that this person is showing me enough where I feel comfortable allowing them to come to my porch. And then you give them a little bit more time, and they're not giving you any flags. They're not showing you that they're crossing your boundaries when it comes to your choices or your resources or your time or your money or how you're feeling in your body. You say, okay, maybe I can give you a little bit more. And you bring them in and in and in, right? And so that's
Well, it is.
I like to teach that.
It is amazing being because all my life, if you can look at it from my perspective, from my life, is that I've always been being a white male growing up during the time when I was always at the front of the line. I always
Mm,
had an opportunity to be able to be. I did not experience many of the things that people who do not have my melanin, who do not share my gender. This is
mm,
it's a completely different. So I'm having to open up my understanding that other people's lives are not the same, other people's experiences are not the same. And then
right.
once I do that, suddenly I go, wait a minute. I have many of the same issues, only at a different level, only at a different level. I
Very
still,
true.
and so therefore I can be teachable. I can sit
Absolutely.
down and I can go when I listen to you, when I listen to the works that you're doing, I sit there and I just let it wash over me and I go, yes, there, and I take what I can and apply it and really to see what it is that I'm doing. I mean, it's so wonderful that you have taken this to TikTok, that has allowed
Thank you.
that has allowed us to be able to experience and to connect with you. How
Thank
has
you
that
very much.
experience been in doing that? What has that experience been like for you?
Yeah, I really would like to encourage anybody who is listening to this. If you feel as though there's something that you feel you just can't escape from, it's in you and it kind of wants to come out, but you think, I don't know, people aren't gonna like it, or it's gonna sound crazy, or it's gonna do that. I really encourage you to silence the sounds of the world and simply focus on expressing who you are. Because I will tell you, for a very long time, I don't know if you noticed on the TikTok, there's like a distinction between what I started, how I started, and where I sit now. And how I started was teaching the way that I normally teach, teaching toxic tactics, teaching you how to see it and how to deal with it and all of that. But then it just didn't feel right because it felt like I was chasing something. I don't know what that was. Am I chasing views? Am I chasing likes? Am I chasing what? And ultimately I had to say, you know what? It just feels better for me just to talk, just to express. And I felt so scared. I'll be honest. I felt so nervous because this was going back to the young me. This was going back to the 17, 18, 19-year-old me that said, but every time you do this, every time you try to be you, these people, but then I had to remind myself, girl, all these lessons that you've learned, all this hardship you've been through, sometimes we just have to tell ourselves, you already have the knowledge and the training and the experience to deal with it differently this time. And so I began to express myself the way that felt natural to myself. And it's been explosive. And I can't explain it. I can't, I to be to be quite honest with you, I have even had people accuse me of using witchcraft or magic. I'm like, no, it really is just me allowing myself to be myself. And when you do, it's almost like you will get to the affirmation
Exactly.
because you're authentic.
That's right. And there is a magic to authenticity. There
Oh
is a
wow.
deep,
Yes.
there is a deep when someone is their authentic self, and we can look at any of the great philosophers, the people that we connect with, and suddenly
Yes.
when they hit that authentic place,
Yeah.
something just opens up inside of me. So when people call it magic or they call it witchcraft or that, because that's what they're talking about. They're just talking about that beautiful alignment of soul and
Alignment.
message
That's
and
it.
purpose, and it flows through.
Yes, it flows through. So now I can tell you that the experience on TikTok has been wonderful. It didn't start that way, but it is now. But that is largely in part due to the fact that I embraced me.
Yeah.
And so I'm happily embracing me.
Thank you. Ty, thank you for this opportunity to get a chance
Yes.
to have you and spend some time with you, because I have been spending time with you since I got a chance to meet you
Oh,
on TikTok. And so to be
that's so
able
nice.
to
Thank
thank
you.
you for opening up and allowing us some time. And look, as a last question, I just want to ask this. Did you bring a child into the world?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Thank you for asking that question. I actually brought four children into the world, and one was stillborn. And um, for a very long time, I privately reached out to all the families that I knew that had also had a stillborn and shared. I would send them flowers every year on their stillborn's birthday and all of that. But I brought four beautiful children into this world. Three are magnificent. They are so amazing. They inspire me every day, and I know they are going to carry the torch in ways I can't even fathom right now. And for the one that I no longer have, I really live life more fully because of him. Unfortunately, in the nastiness, my ex-husband threw away all my stillborn child's things because some people that are in a different space with personality disorders, they just, I don't fault anybody. It's horrible behavior, but they have to deal with their own behavior in their own way. Unfortunately, we are often collateral damage, and this is why I teach people to step away from that so they don't have to go through that pain. But I adore the idea that I still get to live through Michael's memory and raise these three other beautiful kids.
Oh,
Love them.
thank you. Thank you very much for this time. And we'll get a chance just to see in the wonderful magic of the future whether or not we get a chance to
Oh,
connect
absolutely.
again.
I would love to come back. Yes,
Oh,
please.
well, thank you, Ty. Thank you. And we will have everybody, there's the link both to your Boundary Up website and as well as to your TikTok. And we'll get an opportunity to be able to connect with you again. Thank you,
Thank you. Thank
Ty.
you very much. Thank you.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you everyone for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.